My legs will not close. The pain is too much. The young waitress sobbed. She moved unsteadily past the crimson booths, her thighs forced together as if walking was torture. The floor was a pattern of black and white squares. The air smelled of burnt coffee and hot oil. Three powerful men sat frozen when her words split the silence of the diner. I am unable to close my legs. It is agony. Her voice was a faint whisper. The marks on her body were not. And what the mob boss did next brought the entire town to a standstill. Before this story goes on, let us know where you are watching from. And if this story moves you, please subscribe because I have something truly incredible planned for you tomorrow. Now, let us get back to it. This story will show you that sometimes, when the system fails us, help arrives from the most unexpected places. It is a powerful reminder that even in darkness, there are those who choose to protect the vulnerable, and that true strength is not about control, but about standing up for those who cannot stand alone. Christopher Giancarlo had seen enough broken men to recognize real suffering from simple fear, but he was not ready for the girl who collapsed near the metal-trimmed counter. She was 22, maybe 23 years old. Dark rings were pressed under her eyes, deep and hollow. Her black and white uniform was ripped along the bottom. She was missing one shoe, and the other was damaged beyond repair. Damp strands of her light brown hair clung to her neck, and every motion she made seemed to cause her body to cry out. Giancarlo placed his espresso cup on the table with slow precision as all his senses went on alert. His two associates, Victor and Dante, became completely motionless. The jukebox in the corner seemed to die down, leaving only the sound of the waitress's labored breathing and the far-off sound of plates from the kitchen. The night cook had even paused, his spatula held in the air above the grill. She came to a stop in the middle of the room, her legs shaking uncontrollably while her hands gripped her lower stomach. Her face was red with agony and a deeper emotion. It was shame and fear, the kind that comes from wounds that are invisible but felt by everyone. Giancarlo stood up slowly, keeping his hands open and his movements careful. "You are hurt, sweetheart." His voice was low, without his usual tone of authority. The same voice that ordered deaths now sounded almost kind. The girl gave a slight nod. Tears cut paths through the foundation. She had applied to hide a bruise on her cheek. It was a new mark, maybe 12 hours old, the type that would get darker overnight. "My landlord," she swallowed, and the simple act appeared to cause her pain. "Last night. He told me the rent was late one more time. He said I could pay in other ways." The way she held herself was not out of shyness. It was from pain, a deep, spreading pain that made her bite down on her lip with each tiny adjustment, each try to find a stance that did not send fire through her body. "What is your name?" he asked. "Lyra," she said the name as if it were a secret she was ashamed of. "Lyra Hart." He forced his way inside. When I resisted, he shoved me. I fell against the bed frame. Something sharp cut into me. I think something inside me tore. I went to the hospital, but I have no insurance. They told me they could not cover the expense without a report from the police. Victor took a sharp breath behind Giancarlo. Dante swore viciously in Italian, a curse that called on saints and promised violence at the same time. Giancarlo's face hardened into a cold, determined mask. It was the face he put on before making choices that would alter lives for good. "You are in the right place now, Lyra. We will take care of you. I give you my word." He walked around the counter with deliberate steps, each one slow and aware of her clear pain. She flinched when he got close but did not move away. She had nowhere else to go. That sad truth was visible in her eyes. He pointed to the closest booth. "Sit down gently. This is not the time to act tough." Lyra lowered herself onto the red seat with a gasp that showed how much pain she was holding back. She grabbed the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white, and breathed through her nose as if following instructions on how to endure pain. "I should not be here. I know who you are. Everybody does. But I had no other options. The police, they do not help people like me. And my landlord, he has connections. He warned me that if I said anything, if I made a fuss. Giancarlo sat down opposite her. His dark blue suit was perfect, even at this late hour. It was 3:30 in the morning, yet he looked ready for either a corporate meeting or a funeral. Connected to who? She moved her head from side to side, grimacing. I do not know any names, only that he boasted about it. He claimed to have powerful friends who would make me vanish if I became a problem. He said nobody would ever take the word of a waitress over a man who owned property. He said girls like me were disposable. That last word lingered in the diner's air, disposable. Dante took a position near the door, crossing his arms and watching the street through the large glass windows. Victor went into the kitchen and spoke quietly to the cook, who nodded and stepped back. The diner grew silent, filled only by the hum of the large refrigerator and Lyra's shaky breaths. Giancarlo leaned in just a little. How long has he been doing this? 3 months. Her voice cracked and shattered. It started after I lost my job at the department store when it shut down. He gave me a good deal on the apartment because I was desperate. He said I looked like his daughter. I thought it was my lucky day. Then, the first night, he came by drunk and started rattling the doorknob, just checking. It got worse from there. Last night was the most terrible. I threatened to call the police on him, and he just smiled. He said I did not have any evidence. He said they would all believe I was just a renter trying to get out of paying what I owed. Victor came back and knelt by the booth with an unexpected smoothness for such a large man. I contacted Doc Ferraro. He is coming now. He is discreet. There will be no records unless you ask for them. There will be no questions. Lyra's eyes grew wide. I cannot pay for a private doctor. I make minimum wage and tips. I have about $70 to my name. You are not paying for anything. Giancarlo's voice was final. It was the same tone he used to claim territory and end arguments for good. Dante, bring down the metal shutters. I want this place sealed. Nobody gets inside unless I say so. Victor, contact the others. I want a security perimeter set up in 15 minutes. The shutters came down with a loud metallic bang, changing the diner from a public place into a secure stronghold. The lights hanging from the ceiling created long shadows, making the cheerful 1950s decor look serious, protective, and menacing. Lyra looked at Giancarlo, her expression a mix of confusion and hope. Why are you doing this for me? You have no idea who I am. I am a nobody. Giancarlo remained silent for a second, looking at her face. He saw the fear, the agony, and the faint hope that someone, anyone, would finally do something instead of just looking away. Because no one else is going to. And because men like your landlord count on the idea that girls like you have no one to help them. That idea needs to be changed. Victor brought over a chair, its legs scraping loudly on the tiled floor. Boss, if this landlord has the connections she thinks he does, we could be entering someone else's business. It might start a fight we do not want. Then we will learn whose business it is, Giancarlo said, never taking his eyes off Lyra, and we will determine if those connections are more important than doing the right thing. Dante added from his spot by the door, his accent stronger than before. This news will travel quickly. Everyone in town will find out you stepped in for a waitress. They will have questions. They will draw conclusions. Let them. A new look appeared on Giancarlo's face. It was something that resembled purpose, like a man who had sought purpose through violence and had now discovered it in offering protection. Let them find out that some lines exist that even I will not allow men to cross. That in my world, there are still rules. And one of those rules is you cannot attack the helpless and think you will get away with it. The kitchen door swung open, and a man in his 60s walked in with an old leather medical bag. He had graying hair, steady hands, and the expression of a man who was no longer surprised by anything. Doc Ferraro. He glanced once at Lyra, and his face became serious with professional worry. Christopher, he said, nodding to Giancarlo, before turning his full attention to Lyra, with a kindness that only comes with years of experience. I am going to check you now, young lady, if you will let me, and afterward, we will talk about your choices and the treatment you will require. Lyra glanced at Giancarlo one last time, checking his face for any sign of a trick or hidden agenda. She saw only firm resolve and something that looked like rage on her behalf, and she gave a slow nod. Okay, please help me. It hurts so much. Giancarlo stood up, giving her room but staying close. Victor, Dante, come with me. Let the doctor work. They walked to the far side of the diner by the jukebox, their voices low and intense. Giancarlo took out his phone, and the screen lit up his face with a blue glow. In the reflection from the metal napkin holder, he could see Doc Ferraro talking quietly to Lyra. He could barely hear her answers. After 5 minutes, the doctor came over to them, his face somber. She needs more than I can provide here. She has internal injuries and they might be severe. I need to get her to my clinic where I have the right tools and better light. I cannot do a proper examination here. Giancarlo's jaw clenched. How bad is it? It is bad enough that if we wait for morning, the damage could be permanent. Doc Ferraro's voice was professional, but his eyes burned with rage. This was no accident. The bruises showed a repeated, deliberate force. And from what I see, this is not new. I can see older, healing injuries. He is getting worse. Each word landed like a stone in Giancarlo's gut. My car is in the back. We are leaving now. Doc Ferraro gave a sharp nod. See you at my clinic in 20 minutes. He looked toward Lyra, who stared back with pure terror. Treat her carefully. She is in as much shock as she is in pain. Giancarlo returned to the booth and knelt to meet her gaze. We have to move you to a place with proper medical tools. My car is ready. Can you stand, or should I carry you? I can try, she said, her voice a tiny, broken sound. I do not want to cause trouble. You are not trouble. The conviction in his own voice startled him. You are a person who needs help. That is not the same thing. Victor went first, pushing open the diner's rear door into the alley. Dante pulled the car up. It was a black sedan with dark windows, its engine a low hum in the 3:45 morning quiet. Giancarlo helped Lyra stand, and her sharp intake of breath felt like a knife twisting inside him. Her knees buckled, and he acted instantly. He scooped her into his arms, one hand beneath her legs, the other cradling her back, careful of her injuries. I can manage, she whispered weakly. Conserve your energy. His tone was soft, but it was not a suggestion. The trip to Doc Ferraro's office was 18 minutes on deserted roads. Lyra was in the back with Giancarlo beside her. Victor was at the wheel and Dante rode shotgun, his eyes scanning everything around them. At first, she pressed herself against the door, trying to keep space between them. But each pothole made her face tighten in agony. After a while, Giancarlo spoke softly. Leaning on me will be better than the door. It will soften the ride. She paused for a moment, then cautiously moved toward him. The car jolted and she reflexively seized his arm. Her grasp was shockingly tight for someone so frail. I am sorry, she murmured. Never apologize. He held still, not for needing assistance, not for being injured, and certainly not for making it through. Tears welled in her eyes, the first she had shed since walking into his diner. I considered giving up tonight, after he was gone. It just seemed like it would be simpler. Giancarlo's voice turned to ice. That is precisely what monsters like him want. They want you to feel too much shame, too much exhaustion, too much pain to resist. They want you to hold yourself responsible. But I did resist. That is why he got worse. I tried to stop him and his rage exploded. He called me ungrateful. He told me he was charitable just by letting me live there, that he could have made me homeless. That is not charity. Giancarlo stared at the street lamps blurring past. True charity never asks to be repaid with your terror or your suffering. They arrived at the clinic, a building on a silent street that could have been any other house. Doc Ferraro was waiting for them. The lights were on in a rear room and the door was open. He showed them into a treatment room that was impressively stocked. Surgical steel shone beneath powerful lamps. The air smelled of disinfectant and something more. It smelled like safety, like competence. Giancarlo placed Lyra gently on the exam table. I will be just outside this room. Doc Ferraro is the finest there is. You have nothing to fear here. Her hand shot out and caught his before he could leave. Please stay close. I will be right through that door. He gave her hand a reassuring press. Nobody will get through me. Nobody. The exam lasted for 45 minutes. Giancarlo walked back and forth in the waiting room while Victor and Dante guarded the door. Each small noise from behind the door made his muscles tighten. He had commanded acts of brutality, seen the results of vengeance, but hearing Lyra's muffled sobs of pain was a completely different kind of agony. It was personal. It was infuriating. At last, Doc Ferraro came out. He dried his hands, his face grim. He said there was internal damage, significant bruising around her pelvis, and a likely fracture in her lower spine. She will require a lot of rest, medicine, and physical rehabilitation. The harm is characteristic of a violent sexual attack. Did you record it all? Giancarlo's tone was frigid. All of it. Photographs, a detailed report, everything is complete. The doctor looked at him directly. But she is too frightened to go to the police. She is convinced they will dismiss her story. And from what she said about her landlord's influence, she probably has good reason to be afraid. I will handle the landlord. Giancarlo started for the exam room. Is she able to leave? It would not be safe. She has to stay put for a minimum of 12 hours. I have a private room upstairs for recovery. She is welcome to use it for as long as she needs. Then we will be here too. Giancarlo turned to Victor. Arrange for our men to work in rotations. This building is off limits to anyone we do not approve. Back in the room, Lyra was on her side, drawn into a tight knot of self-protection, a cover pulled high to her neck. Her face was ashen, her eyes swollen and raw. As Giancarlo came in, she met his gaze with an expression that shattered his defenses. It was trust. A desperate, delicate trust from a person who had been taught to trust no one. Doc Ferraro said you must rest, he began, his voice softer than it had been for many years. We have a secure, protected room upstairs for you. You are not by yourself. Will you be here? Her question was almost a whisper. I know this is odd. We are strangers, but I am terrified that if I fall asleep, he will be waiting. I am scared this is not real, and I will find myself back in that place. Giancarlo drew a chair to the side of the table. He sat down with the stillness of a man accustomed to long, dangerous waits. I will be here. When you open your eyes, you will be right here, and you will be safe. I promise you that. Why are you helping me? Tears traced paths down her face. A man like you does not usually care about someone like me. A man like me is not often given an opportunity to do the right thing. He held her gaze. Then think of this as my opportunity. Her eyelids fluttered shut as weariness finally overcame her terror. Soon, her breaths became deep and regular. Giancarlo remained in the chair, observing her. This shattered young woman had wandered into his life and broken through a part of him he believed was long dead. It was the instinct to shield someone, not for money or for influence, but simply because they were worthy of protection. By 6:30 that morning, Giancarlo had completed 8 calls. Victor was by the window in Doc Ferraro's office, studying notes he had taken. Dante came back from his scouting with a thick file folder. Lyra was upstairs, sleeping deeply from the medicine, her body finally getting the relief it craved. Giancarlo emptied the folder onto the desk. It contained pictures, ownership deeds, financial histories, and criminal background searches. A driver's license photo showed an ordinary-looking man. His name was Kenneth Grimes, age 52, the owner of 4 local apartment buildings. His credit was perfect. He had no police record. Officially, he was just another landlord trying to make a living in the city. Victor pointed his pen at a notepad. But it is never that simple. It never is with men of his kind. Dante produced another stack of papers, these from a different, less formal source. Grimes is not the sole owner of the buildings. A shell corporation called Riverside Investments holds the loans, and Riverside has ties to the Calabrese family. Giancarlo became completely motionless. The Calabrese crew worked out of a territory 2 neighborhoods away. They were not a major force, but they had enough influence to cause trouble for their enemies. Their business was extortion, illegal loans, and minor smuggling. It was not his area of concern, but it was now. How strong is the tie? Giancarlo's voice was flat. Very strong. Dante pushed a final paper forward. For 3 years, Grimes has given the Calabrese organization 10% of what he collects in rent. In return, they supply enforcers when his renters get out of line. His bribes made sure law enforcement ignored building infractions. Unwanted reports would just vanish. Victor's tone was grim. If Lyra had reported the attack, her statement would have collected dust. A couple of detectives on the Calabrese payroll would have guaranteed that outcome. A girl like her, with no one to back her up and no money, stood no chance against a landlord with powerful friends. She'd have been dismissed as a problem, possibly even accused of lying to the police. Giancarlo held the picture of Grimes, examining it. The man had a weak chin and receding hair, the kind of face that could offer a friendly smile while plotting to take advantage of you. This attack on Lyra was not his first crime. Dante produced 3 additional folders. I located 2 other complaints from the last year. Both were filed by women, both one-time tenants, and both investigations were closed for lack of proof. One of the women skipped town completely. The second took back her story after her apartment was ransacked. A definite pattern. Giancarlo placed the photograph down with deliberate care. He targets women in difficult situations, gives them a place to live, and then exploits their weakness, while the Calabrese family protects him. That is right. Victor stepped up beside the desk, indicating we have an issue. If we make a move on Grimes, the Calabrese family will take it as an attack on them. It could ignite a conflict we are not ready for. Or, it presents a chance to make a point. Giancarlo settled back into his chair and steepled his fingers. We can show that some boundaries cannot be crossed, even by well-connected men, that harming defenseless women is unacceptable, no matter who offers them sanctuary. Boss, respectfully, the Calabrese family will not interpret it that way. Dante's voice was filled with caution. They will view it as an insult to their authority, an intrusion into their affairs without consent. Angelo Calabrese is not famous for his forgiving personality. Then we will ensure Angelo sees this is not a territorial dispute. Giancarlo's tone became ice. This is a matter of honor. A matter of... Our world has codes of conduct. One of those codes says you do not target the vulnerable for profit. The official channels are useless. Victor said it as an undeniable truth. Any official complaint will be made to disappear. Any attorney Lyra brings in will be defeated by Calabrese influence. The justice system is not an option for her. So we operate outside the justice system. Giancarlo rose and walked to the window, gazing down at the peaceful road. We resolve this the old-fashioned way, face to face, openly, and we make certain the reasons are understood by all. You intend to target a Calabrese-protected man. Dante spoke each word with deliberation, confirming he grasped the plan. Without getting approval, without discussing boundaries, you just want to take him. I intend to bring justice to someone who has avoided it for far too long. Giancarlo turned to look at them again. And I want to send a message that this has nothing to do with money or influence. It is about establishing a limit. Certain acts are unforgivable, regardless of the tribute you pay. Victor and Dante shared a look. This was out of character. Giancarlo had built his power on calculated decisions, smart partnerships, and careful talks. Pursuing someone under Calabrese protection without any diplomatic preparation was dangerous and could set off a war. What happens to the girl? Victor inquired. If this turns bad, if the Calabresi family strikes back, she will be in the line of fire. Then we will guarantee her safety. Giancarlo's voice permitted no debate. And we will make Grimes realize that what he did to Lyra was not merely a crime, it was the final mistake of his life. What is your strategy? Dante shut the file. A careful one. Giancarlo walked back to the desk and started arranging the papers in a specific sequence. First, we need more information. I need to understand Grimes's daily life, his vulnerabilities, his contacts, and the places he feels secure. Second, we make contact through a neutral third party, someone who can speak with Angelo Calabresi without sparking an immediate fight. You want to bargain? I want to clarify. There is a distinction. Giancarlo gathered the files of the other women. We will show this to Angelo as a situation that casts a shadow on his own operation. We will explain that a predator using his protection tarnishes his name. We will offer him a chance to cut ties with Grimes before we act, and if he says no, then we act regardless. Giancarlo's face was set in stone. And we will handle the fallout. But I will not allow that man to escape accountability for what he did to Lyra simply because he pays off the correct individuals. The room fell silent. From upstairs they could hear Doc Ferraro moving about, attending to his patient. Outside, the morning commute was beginning. People were on their way to their jobs, completely unaware that inside this plain building, a choice was being made that would send shockwaves through their city's hidden world. Giancarlo looked at his men. We will execute this correctly. We will execute this intelligently. But we will execute this. No young woman should have to endure this because the law failed and powerful men looked the other way. That stops today. Victor gave a slow nod. I will connect with my sources, find someone who can deliver a message to Angelo Calabresi, and I will continue to dig up information on Grimes. Dante took the file. We will know every detail about him by tomorrow, every weakness, every hidden fact. Good. Giancarlo started for the door. I am going to see Lyra. When she is awake, she needs to hear that we are taking care of this, that she has no reason to feel unsafe anymore. He ascended the stairs to the quiet room and gently opened the door. Lyra was still sleeping, her features finally calm, the stress lines erased by medicine and deep exhaustion. He sat again in the chair next to her bed, ready to stay as long as it took, because that is what true protection was. It was not just eliminating a danger, but being a constant presence, a shield between her and the world, and the living proof that someone was willing to watch over her. Lyra came to at 2:15 in the afternoon. Her eyes fluttered open, a wave of confusion washing over her before the memories flooded back. The pain was still there, muted by the drugs, but it was real. She turned her head and found Giancarlo sitting in the chair by her bed, alert, his gaze fixed on the doorway with the watchfulness of a man who had given his word. You stayed. Her voice was scratchy from disuse and tears. I told you I would. He got up and poured her some water from a nearby pitcher. Just small sips. Doc, Ferraro mentioned you would be dehydrated. Her hands trembled as she took the glass, and she drank 3 tiny mouthfuls before her stomach rebelled. How long was I out? Nearly 8 hours. Your body required the rest. He took the glass from her and placed it down. How is the pain now? Less. It is still there, but less. She tried to move and winced. Where am I right now? Doc Ferraro's facility. You have been protected here, but we have to get you to a more secure location, a place where you can recover in peace while we resolve this matter. A flicker of panic crossed her face. My apartment. I have to get my belongings, my papers, the photos of my mother. My whole life is in that place. We have already taken care of it. Victor retrieved all your personal effects. Your clothes, documents, pictures. Everything is being transported to a safe place right now. You will never set foot in that apartment again. But my rent, he will show up looking for me. Let him. Giancarlo's voice was empty of emotion. He will not be able to find you, and when we are finished, he will have much bigger problems to worry about than one missing tenant. Dr. Ferraro came in, with a wheelchair, his face professionally impassive. "It is time to relocate you, my dear. I have provided Mr. Giancarlo with your care instructions. Pain relief every 6 hours. You must rest and avoid much movement for the next 72 hours. Where are you taking me?" Lyra's eyes darted between the two men. "To a safe place." Giancarlo assisted her into the wheelchair, his touch surprisingly gentle for a man of his build. "A place where my people can look after you properly, where you can get well without being afraid." The safe location was a house in a sleepy suburban area, a 2-level home with a private yard and poor visibility from the road. Nothing about it hinted at danger or illegal activities. It looked like any other ordinary house, and that was the entire idea. It was anonymous, plain, and secure. Victor was waiting for them at the entrance. "The area is locked down. 4 men working in shifts. The windows are reinforced, and a rear escape route is ready in case we have to get her out fast." Inside, the home was decorated plainly, but was very comfortable. Giancarlo carried Lyra up the stairs to a room that had been made ready for her. Fresh linens, warm lighting, and her personal items were already laid out on a dresser. The pictures of her mother were propped on the bedside table. Lyra's eyes welled up with tears as soon as she noticed them. "You got everything. We found all we could." Victor paused at the doorway. "If anything is missing, just write it down. We will go back for it. Thank you." She gazed at the 3 men who stood around her. These hardened criminals were showing her more decency than she had seen from anyone in a long time. "I just do not get why you are helping me. What is it you expect from me?" Giancarlo helped her get comfortable in the bed and adjusted the blankets. "We expect you to recover, to feel secure, and to stop living in constant fear. Nothing more. People never do things for free." Her voice was heavy with bitter experience. "Everybody has a price. Then let this be our payment for every time someone should have helped you, but did not." He began to leave the room. "There is a meal ready downstairs. Your medicine is on the nightstand with directions. One of my associates will be posted just outside this room around the clock. If you require anything, absolutely anything, you tell them." "What happens if he finds out where I am?" "He will never know." The conviction in Giancarlo's tone was absolute. "And if he did, he would need to get past 6 of my men who are armed. He is not that kind of brave." Dante stood in the doorway. "I have the first watch. The kitchen is full of food. The doctor left instructions for what you can eat. Simple things. Soup and toast, nothing heavy for now." Lyra gave a small nod, feeling the weight of her tiredness pull her down again even after sleeping for so long. "Are you coming back?" She looked up at Giancarlo. "Or is this the last time I will see you?" "I am coming back." He stopped at the door. "This is not the end, Lyra. This is the start of making sure you never have to feel this scared ever again." The night settled over the house, covering it like a soft blanket. Lyra was in bed, the windows cracked just enough to let the cool air inside. The sounds of crickets and faraway cars created a calm rhythm. She could hear people moving around downstairs, the sound of quiet steps and the low voices of men as they changed shifts. At 8 o'clock, Dante brought her soup with some crackers. At 10:30, a man she hadn't seen before came to check the locks on the doors and windows. At midnight, she heard Victor's voice from downstairs, giving orders in his usual calm and capable manner. She knew she should feel terrified. She should be trying to figure out a way to escape. She should be questioning every single thing about where she was. But instead, for the first time in 3 long months, she actually felt safe. The realization that someone was watching over her, that someone would show up if she cried for help, that someone had decided she was important enough to keep safe. It was all so much, almost unreal, and something she desperately needed. At 2 in the morning, her exhaustion was not enough to let her sleep, so she slowly made her way down the stairs. Each step sent a jolt of pain, but the medicine made it bearable. Dante immediately looked up from where he sat at the kitchen table, instantly alert. "You need to be resting. I was not able to sleep. It is too quiet here." She rested her body against the doorframe. I am so used to the sounds of the city. This place is too still. He offered a small smile. That is a complaint I did not expect to ever hear. Too much quiet. Is he serious about helping me? She asked the question that had been on her mind the entire evening. Or is this a temporary arrangement, just until I become a problem? The boss does not believe in temporary things. Dante's voice was firm with belief. When he gives his word, he follows through, even when it is hard for him, especially when it is hard for him. But why? What does he get out of all this? Maybe he gets nothing. Maybe that is the entire idea. Dante got up and went to get her a glass of water. Sometimes just doing what is right is the only reward you need. The boss has not had many opportunities to do the right thing. This is one of them. He will not let it go to waste. Lyra took the glass of water and stared out the window into the dark street. A car was parked on the corner, and she could see two people sitting inside it. More security, more people watching. A small army of dangerous men, all focused on protecting one waitress who was broken. It did not feel real, like a vivid dream she was about to wake up from. But the aching in her body was definitely real. The bottle of pills on the kitchen counter was real. The sound of Dante's even breathing just behind her was real. This was actually happening. This safety, this concern, this strange kind of rescue from a mafia boss who had decided she was worth something. And for that night, for one single precious night, she allowed herself to think that it might just last. Giancarlo came back to the safe house at 7:30 the following morning. He was carrying a briefcase made of leather and the burden of news that was about to change everything. Lyra was already up, seated very carefully in the living room and drinking the tea Dante had made for her. She already looked a little better, with some color back in her cheeks, and the terrified expression in her eyes was not as intense. He placed the briefcase on the coffee table with slow, deliberate motion. We have to discuss Kenneth Grimes. Her hand shook just a little as it held the teacup. What is there to say about him? About the things we uncovered? Giancarlo unlatched the briefcase and took out the first of many folders. For the last 18 hours, my team has been digging for information. What they managed to find is much worse than we first imagined. Victor walked in from the kitchen holding his own stack of papers. Boss, the final witness has just confirmed what she saw. That brings the total to 7. 7? Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. 7 different women. Giancarlo laid out several photographs on the coffee table. All of them were Grimes's tenants from the last 4 years. All of them were in difficult situations, and all of them were his targets. He tapped the first picture. Jessica Ramirez, 24 years old, a single mom. Grimes attacked her 6 months after she got the apartment. She went to the police and reported him. The case was dismissed because there was not enough evidence. Lyra just stared at the picture. What ended up happening to her? She relocated 3 states away. Victor's voice was completely empty of emotion. She was too scared to remain in the city, so she left her family, her friends, and a job she really liked. She just ran. Giancarlo pointed to the next photograph. Emma Pete, 19, a student in college who was working 2 jobs just to pay for school. Grimes waited for a month when she was late with her rent, then he made her the same offer he made to you. She told him no. He attacked her anyway. Did she tell anyone? She made an attempt. Victor held up a police report. She filed a formal complaint and gave them a full statement. A detective came to speak with her one time, and after that, there was nothing. The case just stopped moving. No one followed up, no one investigated. It just vanished inside the system because of his ties to the Calabrese family. Lyra's voice was full of realization. They made the whole thing disappear. That is exactly right. Giancarlo went through the rest of the pictures. Sarah Kim, 26 years old, an immigrant with very little English. Grimes used that against her. He told her that if she reported him, she would be sent out of the country. She was convinced he was telling the truth. She lived in constant fear for 8 months before she finally left the United States. Dante came in holding another folder. Boss, We just got the confirmation on the two women from 3 years ago. Both of their cases show the exact same history. Complaints were made, evidence was gathered, and then, all of a sudden, the cases were marked as closed. The same detective was assigned to both investigations, the same one. Let me take a wild guess. Victor's voice was sharp. Detective Paul Hendris. How did you figure that out? Because Hendris has been taking money from the Calabresi family for the last 5 years. Dante put the folder on the table. Any complaint that involves their business gets sent straight to him. He is the one who guarantees that nothing ever goes to trial. He has a perfect record of closed cases and 0 arrests. Lyra put her teacup down, her hand trembling. So even if I had called the police, even if I had reported him right away, it would not have made a difference. Not in a legal way. Giancarlo's voice was heavy. The system is broken, designed to shield men like Grimes and the groups who make money from them. And that is the reason we are going to go around the system completely. He took out a much thicker file, this one filled with financial documents. But this is the part that makes it so much worse. Grimes is not just attacking his tenants, he is making a profit from it. Take a look at this. He laid out several bank statements. Every single time a woman makes a complaint and then withdraws it, Grimes gets a payment from a company called Riverside Investments. $5,000 for each incident. They are actually paying him. The horror in Lyra's voice was clear. The Calabresi family is paying him to attack women? Not in a direct way, Victor explained. The money is recorded as reimbursements for property maintenance, but the timing lines up too perfectly for it to be a coincidence. Every time a complaint is dropped, every time a woman vanishes, Grimes gets his money. It is a system that rewards his predatory behavior. How many times has this happened? Lyra had to ask. 14 separate payments in 4 years. Giancarlo's jaw was clenched. 14 women that we can prove. There could be others who were too scared to ever report it, or too ashamed, or just too sure that no one would ever listen to them. The room fell into a heavy silence, the true scale of what they had found hanging in the air like smoke. This was not a single man who made one horrible decision. It was a well-oiled machine, carefully structured and very profitable. What about the proof? Lyra's gaze swept over the folders spread across the table. You have all this. Financial ledgers, witness accounts, official reports. Can you not bring this to somebody? The federal agents? A district attorney? We could, Victor said, his tone implying this was old ground. But we have an issue. The bank statements were acquired in ways a judge would never approve. The accounts come from women who are too afraid to ever take the stand. And every police file here was marked closed, citing a lack of evidence. So in the eyes of the law, this is all useless. Giancarlo put it bluntly. No DA would ever take this case. No court would hear it. And if we tried to use the legal system, it would signal the Calabresi family that we are targeting their investment. They would bury it all, silence the women, and make the proof vanish. So why collect any of it? Lyra gestured to the mountain of paper. What use is it if it cannot be used? Oh, it can be used. Giancarlo's voice turned to ice. Just not inside a courthouse. This evidence gives us a perfect picture of Kenneth Grimes. It lays out his habits, his tactics, his allies, and, most critically, it points to his weaknesses. You are going to handle him yourself. It was a statement, not a question. We are providing the only kind of justice that will stick. He met her gaze. The justice that the official system will not deliver. But before we act, I have to be sure you know what this entails. The actions we are about to take fall outside of any law. It will be final and cannot be undone. Will he be stopped? Lyra asked, her voice firm. Will other women be safe from what happened to me? From what happened to Jessica and Emma and Sarah and so many others? Yes. In that case, I understand. She looked him straight in the eye. And I need you to do it. Giancarlo snapped the briefcase shut. Victor, get in touch with our guy. Arrange a sit-down with Angelo Calabresi for the morning. We lay this out for him. We give him the chance to wash his hands of Grimes. And if he says no, we We proceed without his consent. Giancarlo rose to his feet. And we demonstrate that shielding monsters carries a heavy cost, even for an organization as old as the Calabrese family. Dante started collecting the folders. And Detective Hicks? He is involved in this as well. We will deal with one issue at a time. Giancarlo walked to the door. Our first priority is Grimes. After that, we will figure out how to handle the corruption that kept him safe. The sit-down with Angelo Calabrese took place at 10:30 the following morning at a neutral site, a social club in Little Italy that had brokered truces between families for 3 generations. Giancarlo showed up with Victor, having left Dante to guard Lyra at the safe house. The briefcase full of evidence rested on the table between them like a primed explosive. Angelo Calabrese was 68 years old, with silver hair, and he wore the burden of his life in organized crime with a refined calm. He sat opposite Giancarlo, flanked by 2 of his men, his face a perfect mask of neutrality. "You asked for this meeting." Angelo's voice was smooth, revealing nothing. "I am here." Giancarlo opened the briefcase and laid the files out on the table. "Kenneth Grimes. He is an asset you protect. He gives your organization a cut. In return, you shield his business dealings." Angelo looked at the papers but made no move to touch them. "And? This is a normal business arrangement. It is no concern of yours. It becomes my concern when his business dealings involve the methodical assault of defenseless women." Giancarlo slid the witness accounts across the table. "We have 7 confirmed victims, and probably more who were too scared to speak up. For 4 years, your protection has allowed a predator to hunt without consequences." A flicker of hardness entered Angelo's eyes. "You sit at my table to give me a lesson on right and wrong? A man with your reputation? I am here to give you a chance to walk away from a situation that is about to tarnish your name." Giancarlo's voice was perfectly even. "When this story breaks, and I promise you it will, the Calabrese name is going to be attached to a man who victimizes women. Your whole operation will be tied to enabling brutal violence for money. That is not the story you want told about you. Is that a threat of exposure?" "It is a statement of fact," Victor said, speaking for the first time. "The evidence is ready. The witnesses are in place. This can remain a private matter. But if you continue to shield Grimes, we will have to use methods that are very, very public." Angelo was quiet for a very long time, his eyes on the files. He finally looked up. "What is it you want?" "I want you to drop your protection of Grimes." Giancarlo's gaze was immediate and unwavering. "There will be no retaliation against his victims, and you will not interfere with how we resolve this. You expect me to authorize a move on an asset who provides a steady income. I expect you to recognize that some profits are not worth the cost. That your family has a code, that you don't give cover to predators no matter what they offer." The air in the room grew thick with tension. Angelo's men made small, tense movements. Victor did not move a muscle, his hands in plain sight but prepared. Giancarlo projected an air of utter certainty that was almost arrogant. At last, Angelo said, "You have put me in a very tight spot, Christopher. Agreeing makes me appear weak. Refusing means you ruin my name. I am at a loss either way. You lose a lot less by choosing your principles over your profits." Giancarlo shut the briefcase. "And you will gain something far more important. You will gain respect. It will be known that even in this world, there are lines you do not cross. That the Calabrese family does not protect monsters." Angelo watched him for another tense moment before giving a slow nod. "Grimes is no longer under our protection. It is done, effective now. What becomes of him is your concern. However, his real estate holdings will go to Riverside Investments. That part is not up for discussion. His properties will be transferred to his victims." Giancarlo's voice left no room for debate. "We start with Lyra Hart. She will receive his main property, the building she was living in. The rest will go to the other women whose lives he ruined. That is the only way this concludes. You are demanding a great deal. I am demanding justice. There is a distinction. Angelo sat back in his chair, thinking. He then offered his hand. Agreed. The properties will be transferred. Grimes is on his own. But Christopher, be clear on this. If the way you handle him creates any trouble for my family, if it brings the wrong kind of notice, we will have this talk again under much less civil conditions. Giancarlo shook his hand. I understand. It will be handled cleanly, quietly, and finally. By 6 o'clock that night, Kenneth Grimes was fastened to a chair in a warehouse down by the docks, his hands bound with zip ties behind him, with two of Giancarlo's men on either side. The room was dark and cold, and smelled of rust and damp concrete. A single light bulb dangled from the ceiling, creating deep shadows. Grimes was taken from his office at 4:30. There was no warning and no reason given, just two men who showed up and led him to a car that was waiting. He now sat drenched in sweat despite the chill, his terror a palpable thing in the air. Giancarlo came in at 6:15. Victor followed, holding the briefcase. He took a chair and sat down facing Grimes, saying nothing for a solid minute, simply staring. He let the silence work on him. Do you have any idea who I am? Giancarlo finally spoke. Grimes gave a frantic nod. Everybody knows who you are. Good. Then you know that I do not make empty threats. I do not bother with symbolic acts. When I decide on a course of action, it is absolute and final. Are we clear? I do not understand why you brought me here, Grimes said, his voice trembling. I have never crossed you. My business is nowhere near your interests. Your business is under the Calabrese shield. Giancarlo's voice was flat. Or it was. That protection was cancelled 2 hours ago, which means you are sitting in this room with nobody to call, nothing to offer, and no exit that does not go through me. All the blood drained from Grimes's face. I make my payments. I am never late. Your money is no longer good here. Victor set down the briefcase and started to arrange files on a small table. The Calabrese family has a policy against shielding rapists, especially when the proof is this clear. Grimes looked at the files, and a wave of recognition and pure panic washed over him. Those are confidential police files. There is no way you have those. We have it all. Giancarlo's voice was like stone. 7 victims, 14 payments, 4 years of methodical abuse, all of it covered up by dirty money and corrupt officials. And as of this afternoon, that cover is gone. What is it you want? Grimes's voice was a dry whisper. Is it money? I have funds, real estate. Tell me the price. I want you to grasp your situation perfectly. Giancarlo leaned in. You are going to be given 2 choices, and only 2. You will make your choice this very moment. There are no negotiations and no second chances. What are the choices? You walk out of here tonight. You will sign over every one of your 4 properties to a list of names I will give you. You will empty your bank accounts and leave half the cash with me to be given to your victims. Then you will vanish. A new town, a new identity, a new life, and you will never, ever be seen again. And what is the second choice? Giancarlo's smile was cold and had no warmth. You say no, and I will show everyone what happens to predators who think they can hide behind a corrupt system. They will find pieces of your body over the next 3 weeks, and every criminal organization in this city will understand the reason why. They will understand that Christopher Giancarlo will not allow men to hurt those who cannot defend themselves. Grimes was now shaking, with tears starting to form in his eyes. I will go. I will sign anything you want me to. Just please, do not do this. I have a family. So did the people you hurt. Victor's voice was like stone. Lyra Hart had a life before you decided to ruin it. It is interesting how you only now care about family. The documents are already done. Giancarlo took out a pile of papers. You will sign them right now. Grimes's hands were shaking so much that he could barely take the pen that Victor offered him after he cut the plastic ties. The very first document was a deed transferring ownership of a property. The building at 427 Oak Street now belonged to Lyra Hart. Full and complete ownership. No debts, no strings attached. Sign on the last page. Put your initials on every other page. Giancarlo watched him sign every single line, like a judge watching a death warrant being signed. Grimes put his name to the page. His signature was a jagged line, ruined by the tremor in his hand. Another document appeared. Victor pushed a new sheet of paper in front of him. The property at 815 Maple Avenue was now deeded to Jessica Ramirez. She left town, Grimes whispered, his voice broken. She has been gone for years. We located her, Giancarlo said, his voice devoid of emotion. She will be notified that she is the new owner of a building valued at $400,000. It is repayment for what you stole from her. Sign it. The sound of the pen was loud in the silence. Another signature. Another piece of the empire Grimes had built was handed over to the women he had harmed. 6 more papers came after that. Each one represented a property transfer or the draining of a bank account. Each document was a form of justice that bypassed the courts. When Grimes finally set the pen down, he had signed away everything he owned but the clothes he was wearing and $20,000 to start a new life. Victor gathered the stack, took a picture of every signature, and forwarded them to a lawyer who was ready to file everything that night. The transfers would be recorded before morning. They would be legal, absolute, and permanent. You have 72 hours to get out of this city. Giancarlo stood over the defeated man. If you are here after that time, if we get a whisper that you have tried to contact any woman you used to rent to, this deal is cancelled, and we move to our second option. I get it. Grimes could hardly form the words. I will be gone by morning. Not so fast, Giancarlo glanced at Victor. There is one last thing. Victor took out a phone, switched it to record, and aimed the lens at Grimes. You are about to give a statement, a complete confession. Every attack, every threat, every dollar you took to ruin the lives of those women, you will admit to all of it right now. No, Grimes pleaded, shaking his head. That is evidence. They could use it against me. That is the point. Giancarlo's smile was glacial. Think of it as insurance. If you ever violate our terms, if you return, if you bother any of those women again, this recording will be sent to every news outlet in the state. We will give it to the federal authorities. We will make it go viral. You will become infamous for all the worst reasons. You told me if I cooperated. I told you that you could keep your life. This is what cooperation looks like. Victor held the camera perfectly still. Begin speaking. The confession took 23 minutes. Grimes detailed every assault with cold precision, speaking each victim's name and admitting to every payment he received. When he finished, he was sobbing without restraint, a disgusting mess of a predator who had lost all his power and protection. Victor ended the recording and uploaded the file to 3 different secure locations. It is done. You can leave. Just like that, Giancarlo walked to the warehouse exit. You have 72 hours. Do not waste them. They left Grimes in the chair, unbound, with papers all around him, weeping in the faint light. One of Giancarlo's men would take him to his office to pick up one suitcase and then drop him at the bus station. By sunrise, Kenneth Grimes would be 3 states away, with nothing to his name. Giancarlo got back to the safe house at 9:45 that night. Lyra was sitting in the main room. She was reading a book Dante had given her, anything to keep her mind off the waiting. Her head snapped up as he came in, her expression a perfect mix of hope and terror. It is finished, he said, placing his briefcase on a table. Grimes transferred everything. The building is now yours. You own it completely. No loans, no hidden clauses. The paperwork will be filed officially tomorrow. Lyra just looked at him. The building, my building, your building. It has 4 apartments. 2 have good long-term tenants who always pay their rent and cause no trouble. The 3rd apartment is empty and has already been professionally cleaned. You can move in as soon as you want. The 4th can be rented for income, or you can leave it empty. It is your decision. I am a building owner, she said, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. I went from being unable to pay my rent to owning my own building. Justice is not always about revenge, Victor said, as he came in behind Giancarlo. Sometimes it is about making things right, giving back what was taken. Lyra, you needed to be safe and have stability. Now you do. What about him? Grimes is gone. Giancarlo took a seat opposite her. By this time tomorrow, he will be in a different state. A new identity, a new existence. If he has any sense, he will never show his face here again. If he is a fool, he will learn that our deal only keeps him safe as long as he stays gone. The confession we recorded guarantees it, Dante added from the doorway. One bad decision, and his entire history becomes public. He is not going to take that chance. Lyra sat in silence for a long time, trying to absorb it all. What about the others? She finally asked. The other women are being notified right now. Victor held up his phone to show her a list. Jessica Ramirez is the new owner of a suburban property. Emma Chen has received a large cash payment and the title to a small apartment building. We are using family contacts to find Sarah Kim, who moved out of the country. We are ensuring that every single victim is compensated. This feels impossible, Lyra said to the three of them. It is real, Giancarlo's voice was solid. And it is done. The deeds are being registered. The money is being wired. By midday tomorrow, it will all be legally binding and final. Why? She asked, the question that had been circling in her mind. Why take such a huge risk? Why start a fight with the Calabrese family? Why did you give these properties to us instead of taking them for yourselves? Because some principles are worth more than money. Giancarlo looked her in the eye. Because Grimes bought those places with the proceeds of his crimes against vulnerable women. To sell them would make us part of his filth. Giving them to you and the others is the only clean resolution. Victor stood up. You should get some sleep. You have a big day ahead of you. There are property inspections, meetings with attorneys, and planning your entire future. What do I owe you? Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. For everything you have done, there has to be a cost. There is no cost, Giancarlo said, walking to the door. You owe nothing. This was about justice, not a bill to be paid. But people like you never do things for free. Then I will be the exception, he said, pausing in the doorway. Have a good night, Lyra. When you wake up, you will be a landlord, someone with real security, and someone who will never again live in fear of the person who owns her home. The door clicked shut, leaving Lyra to face the incredible truth of her new reality. The story spread through the streets like a rumor on the wind. By 10:30 the following morning, as the new property deeds were being stamped at the county office, 3 separate people had called the local diner to ask if the story was true. By noon, when Lyra stepped inside her building as its legal owner, a small group of people had formed on the opposite sidewalk, their gazes filled with curiosity. The waitress who got sick. That was the first name they had for her, the girl who passed out at Giancarlo's table. But by the afternoon, the narrative had shifted. The girl Giancarlo stood up for, the girl he declared war to protect. Inside the Italian bakery, Mrs. Duca whispered to a customer, "Did you hear what he did? He challenged the Calabrese family for that poor girl. He forced Grimes to sign it all away. The man skipped town in the dead of night like a common criminal. Down at the barber shop, the men argued about the fallout. That was a risky play, messing with Calabrese property. But Giancarlo must have had approval. There is no chance Angela would have allowed it otherwise." At the laundromat, women talked it over while folding laundry. Maybe he is not the monster we thought he was. Maybe there are some things even he considers sacred. Did you hear he gave the entire building to her? He did not take a penny for himself, just handed her the keys. That evening, when Giancarlo entered the same diner where Lyra had collapsed 3 days before, the mood was different. The room still fell silent. A wave of fear still washed over the patrons. But there was something else beneath it now. A sense of wonder, of respect, a quiet recognition that sometimes a predator will hunt other predators, and that can change what he is. The owner, An old man named Sal, who had owned the place for 30 years, came to his table holding a coffee pot. "This is on me, Mr. Giancarlo. I also wanted to say, what you did for that young woman was a good thing. A very right thing." Giancarlo took the coffee without a word, but Sal kept talking. "Anyway, my own daughter works late and she walks home by herself. To know that you will not allow men like Grimes to operate around here. That means something to a father. It means something to our families. I was not looking for thanks. I am aware of that. That is exactly why it means something." Sal went back to his counter, but his sentiment remained. At 11:15 that night, Giancarlo's phone rang. It was one of his top men. "Boss, we have a situation here. It is not a problem, but it is something you need to be aware of." "What is the situation?" "Three of the businesses on Oak Street sent people to the warehouse. They are here to show their appreciation. They came with gifts, some wine, food, even an envelope with cash. They are waiting for you by the front gate. Tell them to go home. I have no interest in their gratitude. They will not leave. They said they had to show their respect for what you did, that the neighborhood is a safer place now, and that their daughters, sisters, and wives can finally feel secure." Giancarlo was quiet for a long second, then sighed. "Fine. 5 minutes. No long speeches." When he got to the warehouse, a small group was there as promised. They were store owners, restaurant managers, just regular people who had lived under the shadow of Grimes and the corrupt system that kept him in power. They waited with an anxious energy as Giancarlo drew near, unsure of their reception. An elderly woman came forward, presenting a box from a local bakery. "My granddaughter worked for Grimes. He was inappropriate with her. She left her job instead of filing a report, convinced it would do no good. You forced him to answer for his actions. You made him go away. You accomplished what the legal system refused to do. We just wanted to say that we saw it. And we are grateful." Giancarlo took the offering, his face unreadable. "This was a matter for the authorities. My involvement was necessary only because the system is broken. But you were the one who fixed it," a young man added. "When everything else failed, you were there. That matters to people around here." "That does not make me a hero," Giancarlo stated, his voice hard. "I am the same man I was before. Nothing has changed." "Perhaps not," the woman offered a faint smile. "But our view of you has. There is a distinction between someone who seizes whatever he desires and someone who shields the defenseless. It is possible to be both things. We realize that now." The group departed soon after their message was delivered. He had accepted their presence, but their thankfulness was held at a distance. Even so, a change had taken root. In the neighborhood, Christopher Giancarlo was no longer just a source of terror. The perception of him had become more layered. He was still a threat, a man nobody dared to provoke, yet he was also someone who might, in the right situation, intervene when no one else would. From the safe house, Lyra tuned into the 11:30 news. The incident was featured, but it was a censored and ambiguous account. Local developer Kenneth Grimes has suddenly left the city after signing over several of his buildings to the people who lived in them. Insiders claim the strange deal was negotiated by anonymous neighborhood activists. The Calabresi family offered no statement. Neighborhood activists. Lyra's lips almost curled into a smile at the term. It was certainly a creative way to frame what Giancarlo had accomplished. Across the room, Dante kept his watch by the door. "You realize what this is leading to, do you not? You are about to become a local celebrity, the one Giancarlo protected. I have no interest in being famous. It is already happening. The story is spreading. You are being called courageous. He is being called a hero. The whole event is turning into a myth." "He is not a hero," Lyra said softly. "He is a difficult man who performed a righteous act. It does not cancel out the rest of who he is." "No," Dante conceded. "But it does not cancel out the act, either. People can be more than one thing at once. The world is rarely black and white." Lyra gazed out at the glow of the city. In that landscape, The building now legally hers stood tall. Grimes was a fugitive, haunted by humiliation and terror. 6 other women were discovering that a part of their lives had been restored. And Christopher Giancarlo was grappling with a new identity, one that was not just about fear, but about complexity and humanity. People had always gossiped about his brutality, his influence, his illegal dealings. Now the talk was different. It was about the crime lord who defended a server, who challenged the Calabresi family on a point of honor, and who gifted buildings instead of seizing them. The rumor would travel, the legend would expand, and life would be permanently altered. 3 weeks passed. For the first time since the attack, Lyra moved without a trace of pain. The treatment from Doc Ferraro was effective. Her internal damage was mending. The discoloration on her skin had vanished. Her body was slowly but surely healing, taking back what the trauma had taken. She was in the empty third-floor apartment of her building, a space Grimes had used for junk, now transformed. The walls were freshly coated, the floors were new, and daylight poured through spotless panes of glass. This was her place to live. Not a rental, not on loan, but truly hers. Victor had managed the project himself, making certain every detail met her approval. The kitchen gleamed with brand new equipment. The bathroom was entirely new. Her bedroom looked east to greet the sunrise. It was compact but flawless, a haven created from the ruin of a terrible memory. The building's other 2 apartments were still occupied by their established residents. An older pair on the ground floor and a schoolteacher above them. Each had a perfect payment history. Each had lived in silent fear of Grimes, and each had cried with joy when Lyra announced she was the new landlord, assuring them of respect and a well-kept building. She was getting accustomed to being a property owner, dealing with finances, policies, and regulations. Victor found her a trustworthy bookkeeper. Dante suggested a dependable repairman. The property provided a small but steady profit, freeing Lyra from the need to work endless hours just to get by. Yet she felt a pull to work. Being still felt dangerous, like she was anticipating another disaster. So, at 2:30 in the afternoon, she entered a little cafe just 3 blocks away, a peaceful spot with a regular crowd owned by a woman named Helena who was aware of Grimes's reputation. And over time had offered jobs to a few of his old renters, never prying, just providing a safe harbor. "I need a job," Lyra stated at the counter, her hands firm. "Something part-time with some flexibility. Since I am a landlord, I have to be around for my tenants, but I miss the structure of having a job." Helena observed her with an understanding gaze. "You are the young woman they are all discussing, the one Giancarlo assisted. My name is Lyra Hart, and he did assist me. But that is not who I am. I want to be known for what I build from here." A smile touched Helena's lips. "Can you be here tomorrow? The morning shift is 7 to 1. It is a calm atmosphere. No rowdy late-nighters. Just familiar faces looking for coffee and a chat." "That sounds perfect. Just one rule." Helena's look turned grave. "If you are ever made to feel uncomfortable, if any customer causes a problem, you come straight to me. In this place, we protect our own." "Thank you." Lyra's voice was thick with emotion. "That means more to me than I can say." That evening, Giancarlo visited the building, his first visit since the deed was signed over. He discovered her on the third floor positioning furniture, turning the vacant unit into a proper home. "It is looking nice," he said from the entrance, careful not to cross the threshold uninvited. "You have managed the upgrades well. Victor was a big help." She put down a light fixture and indicated the area around her. "I never imagined I would have something of my own. And now I have this whole place. The feeling has not sunk in yet." "It is real," he assured her. "And you have earned it." He waited a moment. "I came to see how you were, to ensure you had all you required. I am beginning a new position tomorrow, part-time at Helena's Cafe. It will give me something to do as I get used to managing the building." "That is smart. Keeping a schedule, staying busy." He shifted, and the setting sun outlined his features. My offer of security still stands. You will not notice my men, but they will be nearby, ensuring your safety. How long will that last? For as long as it needs to, his tone was resolute. Grimes is gone, but the world has more men like him who prey on those they think are weak. They must understand that you are not. I am not weak. She looked directly at him. Not ever again. I made it through. I am a property owner. I have a source of money. I have a life ahead of me. That is not weakness. No. A faint smile appeared on his face. It certainly is not. But accepting security does not make you any less strong. Consider it a precaution. Why are you still involved? Lyra finally voiced the question that had been on her mind. You dealt with Grimes. You balanced the scales. You could be done with this. Why continue? Giancarlo fell silent, his gaze fixed on the street outside. Because my entire life, strength was about seizing things, about dominating, about manipulating events for my own gain. He faced her again. But shielding you, watching you put your life back together, that is a new form of strength, one that has real substance. You do not owe me anything, I am aware. But I am choosing this responsibility. He started for the exit. This one choice, the decision to shield instead of to harm, is the most significant act I have performed in 10 years. Can you tell me how they are? Lyra's words made him pause. The others, Jessica and Emma, and Sarah. Are they all right? Jessica converted her property into a shared house for mothers raising children alone. Emma completed her degree and is submitting applications to study law. Sarah got back from her trip abroad last week and wept for 60 minutes straight when she heard the news. A clear note of pride was in his voice. They are all putting their lives back together, all progressing, because you created the opportunity, because the process failed and action was required. He stopped in the doorway. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow marks a fresh start, your first shift in a world where you no longer need to live in terror. Once he was gone, Lyra remained by the window, looking down at the street. The city was lighting up, bathing the area in a soft radiance. It was her area now, her property, her sanctuary, her life. Her mind drifted back to that terrible evening in the restaurant, the agony, the terror, the frantic move toward the only figures who seemed strong enough to make a difference. She remembered uttering the broken phrase that changed everything. It hurts. I cannot close my legs. But now she could move free of pain, and she could earn a living free of fear, could finally sleep without having terrible dreams. She could own a building, create a new life for herself, and start looking toward the future instead of always looking at the past. The Mafia boss, who at first seemed like just another danger, had become the one who saved her. It was not because he was a good person, but because he decided to do something when it was important. It was because he found a reason to exist in protecting someone. It was because he showed that even men who do bad things can have their own rules, can decide that principles are more important than money, and can provide justice when the official system fails to do so. The town would continue to talk, to tell the story, and to turn it into something like a myth. And Lyra would continue to live her life, to work, and to build something new. She was no longer the girl who had collapsed from her pain, and no longer the victim who had to be rescued. She was just Lyra Hart, a property owner, a survivor, and a woman who discovered that sometimes help can come from the most unlikely of places, from complicated people who are not completely good or completely bad, but just human, just making choices, and just trying to be better. And sometimes that was all that was needed. Thank you for being with me all the way to the end of this amazing story. If you found this story moving, then you need to see what I have for you next. It is even more incredible and uplifting than you could possibly think. So please, stay right here. Click the video that is appearing on your screen this very moment to experience another powerful story that will completely change your perspective. I promise you, it is something you do not want to miss. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful stories and valuable life lessons. Every detail was crafted with purpose, so you can walk away not just entertained, but inspired.